Thanks for joining my Read Aloud today in honor of World Read Aloud Day. I'm going to be reading my book, which was published in 1995, called Will We Ever Have a Pet? And illustrated by Siouxzy Veach, who at the time was the elementary art teacher at the local school in Kuwait where my sons went to school. So let's get started. For the fifth time in as many days, Mrs. Daniels had heard the same sad story from each one of the three children. "Mom," the story would begin, "all of my friends have pets, and I don't. I promise I will take care of it. Couldn't I get a bunny or a hamster or something small?" Mrs. Daniels would smile and tell her children that someday they would get a pet. She did not know that someday would come sooner than she expected. It was springtime, and the Daniels children were getting ready for the annual egg hunt. Dory and Delia put on their new pink-striped sneakers. Dave made sure that all their baskets were ready. When they arrived at the park, Dory noticed the sign-up table for the bunny raffle. "Mom," she began, "may I put our names in the raffle box?" "All right," Mrs. Daniels told her, after she saw there were many names already in the box. Dory, Delia, and Dave gathered many eggs and ate a lot of chocolate. And soon it was time to announce the names of the two children that would win the bunnies. "Shh," Dory scolded, "or we won't hear our names if we win." Mrs. Daniels began to tell her children not to be disappointed if they didn't win when the announcer called out, "And the winner of the second bunny is Delia Daniels." Delia named the bunny Fluffy because it had fluffy white fur, and she fed it and helped her mother clean the cage every day. She even took Fluffy to school for show and tell. But soon, Fluffy began to look very lonely, and Mrs. Daniels told her children that Fluffy needed other bunnies and a place to dig and play. "We just don't have any room for more rabbits, but Uncle Hammond has a farm with many rabbits, and he said you could visit Fluffy whenever you want." Delia protested, and Dory cried, but Mrs. Daniels was firm. So the next day they took Fluffy to her new home. She was very happy to see the other bunnies, and the children were glad to see her playing with them. Uncle Hammond promised he would take good care of Fluffy. A few months later, the children began to tell Mrs. Daniels the same sad story. "We could get a bird like Carrie Stedman. It doesn't need any room to dig or play, and we could teach it to talk," Dory pleaded. "I will buy one bird," Mrs. Daniels replied, "but I want all of you to be responsible for feeding it." "Please make it a pink one," Delia pleaded. Delia's favorite color was pink, and she couldn't imagine that a parrot could be any other color. Mrs. Daniels searched and searched for a pink parrot. She went to every pet store in Soulsville until she finally found a lovebird with apricot-colored chin feathers. "I guess this will do," she told the salesman. When the children arrived home from school that day, they heard the lovebird chirping. Mrs. Daniels had put his cage in the kitchen so he could see the other birds through the window. The children named him Tweety and fed him every day. That summer, the Daniels family went on vacation and left Tweety with Grandma Daniels. Tweety missed the noisy Daniels household, So Grandma Daniels would set his cage outside for a short while every day so he could see and hear the other birds. One day, however, Tweety squeezed out of his cage and flew away. Grandma Daniels knew how much the children wanted a pet, so she went to the store and bought 2 new lovebirds. She knew the lovebirds needed a companion, or they would try to fly away too. Oh, Mrs. Daniels could not believe her eyes when she and the rest of the family returned from their vacation. She thanked Grandma Daniels for taking such good care of the birds and apologized for the trouble that Tweety had caused her. Tweety, too, and Sweetie had very lovely and loud singing voices. They chirped when the family was eating their dinner and when Mr. Daniels was talking on the telephone. Sometimes he couldn't hear what the other person was saying to him. Finally, he told Mrs. Daniels and the children that they would have to find another place to put the birdcage. But the Daniels' house was small, and there wasn't another place to put them except the basement. "Please don't put them down there," cried Dave. "They will be scared, and they won't be able to see the birds outside." "Well, then, I guess we don't have any choice but to give them to the Barry family next door. Their children are all grown, and they have many spare rooms," replied Mr. Daniels. "I am sure they will let you visit them whenever you want." Dave, Dory, and Delia were starting to wonder whether they would ever get a pet. Then Dory came home from school one day and told them she had been studying about fish in her science class. "Mom," she began, "I know that fish are quiet and they don't need a place to play. Can we please get some goldfish?" So Mrs. Daniels went back to the pet store and bought a small aquarium. She knew that tropical fish needed a filter and oxygen or they would die. She picked out 4 nice fish and took everything home. "May I keep the fish in my room?" asked Delia. "That's not fair," protested Dave and Dory. "We should be able to have our own fish too." So Mrs. Daniels went back to the pet store and bought fish bowls and fish for Dave and Dory. The Daniels house finally had pets, and the children were very happy. Mrs. Daniels was very happy too, because she didn't have to go to the pet store anymore. Soon, however, the Daniels family realized that taking care of 3 fish bowls was a lot of work. "I think we should get 1 aquarium for the whole family to enjoy," Mrs. Daniels said. So the next day she went back to the pet store and bought a larger aquarium. Dave, Dory, and Delia put all their fish into it. A few days later, Dory was feeding them. "Mom," she called, "I think Dave's fish is fighting with Delia's." "I'll have to put them in another bowl before something happens," Mrs. Daniel exclaimed. That night, when the Daniels family sat down to eat dinner, Mr. Daniels said, "Children, I know how much all of you wanted a pet, but we just don't have any luck with them. I think we should give the fish to Grandma Daniels. She would enjoy the company." The children were quiet for a while. "Dad," Dory interrupted the silence, "will we ever have a pet?" I wonder what the answer is. "I think we need to find the right pet for our house," Dave suggested. "Yes," echoed Delia. "Could we get a puppy next time?" Mrs. Daniels sighed. "Could we finish our dinner first?" I hope you liked the story. Here's a photo of the author many, many years ago and the illustrator, Mrs. Siouxzy Veach. Thank you for listening to my story, and I'd love to know what you think about it. You can make comments. Thanks for watching and listening.